Welcome everybody. I know there's a handful of people that just kind of jumped in. So welcome. If you want to join us on camera, please do. So there's a lot going on, no matter where you are in the country. One of the things that I was really impressed with just a couple weeks ago, I flew out to Las Vegas to work with the Nevada Recovery Advocacy Project team, and to see their voter engagement was amazing. I know that Texas, I know that Washington, D.C., I know that Maryland, I know that Michigan, I know that Mississippi are all doing these voter engagement campaigns, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and more. And so one of the things that I think about this time of year, or when elections are happening, whether it's a primary or the general election, I always, and Ryan touched on this a little bit, but really to me, this is about how do we engage with candidates and how do we build our community and build our collective power through registering people to vote in a way where people that are running for office have to earn our votes as a constituency, right? Forget Democrat or Republican. This is really about, we want people to look at this as an issue campaign, like the same way as there's other issues. People, sometimes they vote strictly based on somebody's platform on the environment, right? Or women's issues, right? And so thinking about this in a way that we know that recovery and substance use disorder, mental health issues, harm reduction, touches people's lives. We know that there's a lot of people that care about those issues. And so when we get organized locally, we build that power out, okay? And so there's this famous line from the West Wing that I want to share before I just share the tools real quick, and I'll be quick about it. I've fallen asleep watching the West Wing for like years. That's my fall asleep show, which is just kind of nerdy, but that's what I do. There's this candidate that's running for office, and he's going to get beat by 70, 80 points, and he knows it. And so the candidate that's winning and the campaign that's winning goes to him, and they ask him, why are you even doing this? Like, what is the point? And his reply was, nobody gets to run in my district without speaking to my issues. And I think that if all of us, not just the folks in here, but I'm talking about everybody in your community that cares about these issues, family members, people in recovery, mental health advocates, all of us get together and understand that we are a large constituency, and we show that organized voice, and we make sure that people running for office speak to those issues. Do they have information on their flyers or their websites, or when they speak at town halls? And are they addressing substance use disorder, where people are sadly losing their lives daily, and we have a system that cannot help the people that need help? There's a lot of work to do. And so by organizing ourselves, we can have that stronger voice. And by having a stronger voice, that means registering to vote and talking to candidates. And I just voted in the primary. I'm in South Carolina. There was a governor's race primary. And 2 out of the 3 candidates that were running for office sat down with the recovery community. It was about 25 or 30 of us on a Zoom with candidates for governor. We asked them all the same questions. And honestly, there was a candidate that I had never heard of, didn't know her platform, and she answered the questions the way, I like had this connection with that candidate, and I felt good about going to vote in the primary. And so I hope that is an experience that you all can have. I know it's very easy to kind of get tired of politics and be turned off by it. But that, you know, and so I hope that the tools that we put together really kind of help you out. So I'm going to go to the, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. And this is on recoveryvoices.com. Really simple. If you go to the advocacy resources, there's a lot of tools here. We have a lot of tools here for advocates and voters, recovery advocates. There's a section called Voter Resource Hub. You go to the Voter Resource Hub. And I just really quickly, I just want to go over the tools here. This has really helped a number of the advocates in their organizing. And so we just want you to just explore this and use these tools. And it has this section, what does it mean to vote recovery? Determine how recovery is going to influence your personal decision at the voting booth. This is a poll that we like to put out there that actually I'm going to go over that in the next step, but and then evaluate, you know, look at the issues that you care about, whether it's access to healthcare, mental health, overdose prevention, and dive deep into them. So you know where you stand when you're going to talk to candidates. Educate ourselves on who's running, where do the candidates stand, and then finally, step 4, vote. But the great thing about this website is that this recovery issues education piece, if you want to dive into any sort of issue that coincides with substance use disorder, whether it's family support or mass incarceration, racial equity, criminal justice reform, there is affordable housing. This is kind of like a start. You can kind of start there, but we really this is really about voter empowerment, voter education, voter engagement. So really dive into the issues. I wanted to show this real quick, just in terms of numbers. In terms of, you know, we talked about issue voting, you know, LGBTQI issues, gun protection or reform, reproductive rights. Those are all issue votes that get entire populations out to vote. And I wanted to share this really quick. And when candidates see this, they're like, oh, I get it. It kind of gives us some clout here. There's a poll out in, this was done in Clark County, Nevada. There was over 1,000 registered voters, likely registered voters, that were polled, and 55% of them said that they would consider switching their vote if a candidate of another party, you know, say I identify with a particular party, 55% of those people said that if the other candidate had a better stance around addiction recovery and mental health issues, they would probably change their vote. And so we know that this is about the issues, okay? And so just kind of keep that front and center. And then the last sort of piece here, just kind of going back to the tools here, and then I'm going to turn things over to our 2 speakers. There's some really quick tools on here, just view voter tools. If your state allows for online voter registration, if you need to change your address, you need to change the party, you need to change something, if you've moved recently, so you're voting in the correct place, and you need to re-register to vote, you can do voter registration right from this website. You can check your status if you don't know, and then absentee and early voting information. If you live in a state where there's not online voter registration, then sometimes you might have to fill out the form and deliver it somewhere. And so this has a whole directory of where those election offices are. Find your polling location. I use this for the primary because I voted in the primary at one location, and then there was a runoff, and I had to go vote in another location. And so I had to check this. I voted in 2 different places in the same month, even though I have the same exact address. And so this is a really helpful tool. And then here's just your registration deadlines. That varies from each state. And so you can come click on registration deadlines. If you're from Mississippi, you click on Mississippi, and so on and so forth. And so a lot of them are, you have to be registered about 14 to 28 days before the election, depending on what state you're in, but it differs in every state. Some have same day voter registration But you have to really look into that yourself. And so again, this is really about you all diving deep and sharing this with people. And then there's a voter pledge, and all that really is saying, I'm going to keep recovery front and center when I go vote. And also, I'm going to help somebody else in the recovery community that's not registered to vote. I'm going to help them get registered to vote. And that's all it is. And so I'm actually going to put that. I'll put the address of this in the chat box, or Garrett, I don't know if Garrett's still here, actually. Let me, I'll do it. Let's put it in the chat for you all.
I'm here, but I need you to do that part.
Got it. I did it. We're good. Thank you. And everybody does get Garrett and I confused, because we're like literally been on the same Zoom meetings for the past 2 years. So it's quite all right. And so please come here. It's recoveryvoices.com/vote. There's a whole section. Mississippi is going to make this a big part of their vote recovery campaign, is around the disenfranchised voters, right? Part of it is not just voter registration. It's making sure that people that might have like criminal records, that they understand if they're eligible or not, working to pass state legislation to make sure that more people are eligible. We know a lot of people in our community might have that criminal record on their background. And I know a lot of people assume that they can't vote because of it, and that is not necessarily true in your state. And so you have to do that research. And so please come here and check that out. If you're turned away at the polls or something, there's spots here where you can report that. And then finally, there's a ton of voter support there. And then there's a lot on candidate engagement and vote recovery town halls, which brings us to our first speaker, who is Celine's been doing an amazing job. He just reached out and was like, this is what I want to do. I think that there should be a mayoral campaign, a mayoral forum around the issues that are impacting the recovery community in Providence, Rhode Island. And I was like, thank you, because I no longer live in Providence, but I lived in Providence for 8 years, and I'm so glad that folks are organizing. And so I wanted to give Celine about 5 minutes, or a little over 5 minutes would be great, to just talk about your experience in organizing. And it is August 4th is the mayoral forum. And we actually have some candidates that I know personally that are running for office there, which is awesome. When our community starts running for office, that's the whole other level, right? And so Celine, the floor is all yours. It's about 5 or 10 minutes would be great. Thank you.
Okay, hello. I'm Celine. I go by he, him, or they, them pronouns. I have been working for this organization called Ride Cares for about 3 years. I'm a person in long-term recovery from mental health issues. And yeah, I mean, so the idea really did start maybe a year ago. And actually, first, I want everybody to take a deep breath. And I want you to think for a moment, maybe even close your eyes or whatever. Why do you vote? What would you say to somebody who says, why should I even bother voting? Maybe you could put some answers in the chat, or just, write it down, think to yourself. But whenever it comes to organizing, we have to get outside of our own heads. We have to get outside of ourselves. You have to think of yourself. You have to think less of yourself and more of the collective. And that includes a lot of patience, a lot of intentional time, and a lot of listening. Because as we're probably going to see some chat answers coming in, there's lots of different reasons. And just because your reason might be different from other people's reasons. When I first start, so like I always try to start our planning meetings with some sort of question that brings us together. Again, I come from a community organizing background. Like I and more about the community, about personal relationships and strengthening building those relationships. And so when we all can share our experiences together, it makes things a lot stronger and it better grounds us in what we're trying to do. So when in one of our first meetings, I talked about how when I first got started in the community organizing world, I went to a state testimony legislative hearing, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I didn't know what the Senate or House or how bills got made or whatever, but I was told to come, and I was looking for community, and I came and I listened. And I remember in particular, there was a moment where, so this woman came up, and this was a bill to ban conversion therapy in Rhode Island. And I was just coming out as trans. I was just making my own queer community. I was still very new and everything. But this woman came up and she talked about how trans people deserve to live happy, dignified lives. And that really spoke to me because it was like, I was looking for people who supported and accepted me as I am. But then there was somebody who was standing up telling basically to the world, or what felt like the world, because it was her TV and cameras. She was saying to the world that not only do I support you and believe in you, I'm going to fight for your right to live happily. And that really what got to me about this work was like that there's something powerful about telling other people that they deserve these things. Not only on behalf of yourself, but because of others. So that's where I come from in this. So like, so with this campaign or this forum, like we started like at the beginning of the year. And the first thing I did was I went to another ED of another organization called Direct Action for Rights and Equality, who I have seen, they did their own forum. And I was really basing it off that one. And so I talked to the ED because I was like, I don't know how to put on a forum. So he was like, here's what you do. And here's like the problems I went into. And he gave me a lot of great detailed instructions about like, you got to make sure you know all the candidates and you got to reach out to every single one so that you're nonpartisan. He was like, you got to know when the voter registration date is. So for instance, here, the elections in November or the primary September, but the deadline to get registered is like sometime in late August. So that's why we chose early August. He told me about like, outreach and that sort of stuff, and moderator, the importance of moderator and community input. And then from there, I'm just a natural person where I'm just talking to everybody. So I just started a document and I started writing down what people were, and I started very broad. I started asking people like, what are the issues that you're seeing? And that also led to more refined questions because I was talking to a lot of recovery community organizations, and I had to learn how to start asking people like, what are the systems that people are interacting with? Like, what are you interacting with? What are the systems that your clients are interacting with? Because a lot of people in the service world can get very like, I'm just helping a person and I don't care about how they got into that situation in the first place. And when we're doing organizing, when we're doing political organizing, you need to understand power structures. You need to understand the systems. Like, why is it that people are in despair? Because that's where we are. People are in despair. That's why they use. And so oftentimes, yes, again, like jobs, housing, buses, transportation. And then you have to start thinking. And so this was kind of a two-pronged approach. It's like, on one hand, I was talking to people and being like, what are the issues? What are the things they're seeing? On the other hand, I was researching the city. So for instance, I learned that in the city of Providence, we have a strong mayor thing. And I learned about how there's city council and how much power does the mayor, and just really like, one of the things that Chris, the ED, told me was like, you have to be able to ask a question that the mayor specifically can do. Like, I can't ask them to give us more money for behavioral health because that's a state level thing. I wish that I could make them fire police officers, but technically can't do that. That's more of the city council about budgeting the police. And so, yeah, you got to be well informed about what exactly who you're targeting, what do they have the power to do. And so again, that crisscrosses in which then people tell me like, oh, I wish that there was more access to treatment. I'd be like, well, the city can't really do that. So what's something else? And then so kind of go back and forth on that. Then starting around June is when I started having regular meetings with some community members who were interested. And we started just like going through this process. And definitely, and I started with sort of like a work document where I put in the goals, and that has continued to be because like you can try to do everything and you're not going to be able to. So having some set sort of goals and limitations on your project is really important. So for instance, and for our project, it was, I don't want to change the candidates' minds. That would be nice, but this is more about the community coming together to learn about what the platforms are for the candidates. This was also recognized by when we did that exercise in our group about why do you vote? And Aaron told a story about how it's really empowering when you just are able to hear actually what their answers are. And it helps you feel more empowered about being able to make a more informed choice. Again, I parsed out two audiences of people. So there are people in recovery who are kind of already very knowledgeable about sort of systems and about voting. And these were people that we targeted for being our participants, for people to join our planning group or to be somebody who's going to ask a question, somebody who's already like very knowledgeable, has been working the systems, they understand. And then there's a second group of people, which are people who are probably a new recovery, who have never voted in their life, who don't know a thing about voting. It's very important that we understood those two different audiences. So like right now, as we're getting ready for the event, we're really trying to gear towards the people who don't know anything. Whereas as we were trying to get the event questions and the format, we are gearing towards the people who are much more knowledgeable. And again, we're thinking about that ladder of engagement. Like some people who know nothing about voting, getting them to just vote is one step. For people who already are kind of knowledgeable, they know about the systems, getting them to get to a space where they feel like they're empowered to say, I should have decision-making power, I should have input, that's their next ladder. And that's sort of what I'm trying to facilitate within this event, which is why, and I haven't even explained in the event, we have, it's gonna be 2 hours long. We have the first one is a meet and greet with the candidates. And then the second hour is predetermined questions that these participants will come up and ask the candidates. And that all the questions came through. I took all the feedback that I've heard after talking to lots of people, and I brought them into our group, and we had a little jam board, a little sticky notes, and we started just being like, what can we combine together? What are relevant issues? What, along with sort of like what is sort of broadly relevant as well, in the sense of like, we were going to ask about recovery friendly workplaces, but with a limit of only 4 to 5 questions, it just didn't fit. And that's something that's just a little more niche than asking about. And one of the greatest questions I think we developed was, how are impacted people going to have meaningful decision-making power and voting power? Again, it's the wording of the question is about assuming that they are going to do it, because you want to put them in a position to say no or yes. You definitely want to put them in a position to give clear answers. You can't let them do willy-nilly, oh, maybe, yes, no. And again, yeah, it's really about, we tried to identify like, where are the places that they could be making sure that that people have voting power and decision-making power. Because I believe that voting is like one thing, but there's more to just voting. But it is, again, a continuum of engagement. Look at some notes. Also, one thing, like I asked everybody in the group, like, what do you think is the strength of the Providence recovery community? That's really helpful in helping people think about, like, again, like strengths. We're strength-based. What is the community good at, and how can we harness that? Yeah, so I would say the whole time I was really centering how to best represent the diverse recovery community. And that was through talking to a lot of different people of lots of different places, hearing differing opinions and trying to figure out like, what is the most best for everyone. I don't know. And then also like, how does the city work? And where is it on a human decision making level that we can hold them accountable to? Because sometimes when you throw out your vote, it can feel very like, okay, I voted them, but you still don't really understand, like, again, like what are the decisions that you want them to make that will make actual change? Especially when it comes with broad platforms of like, okay, I support harm reduction, I support overdose prevention. Like, okay, then how exactly are you going to do that? And there's multiple, and again, it's different. There are different ways, state level, federal levels, city level ways that those things could be addressed. And you need to research them. You probably already know about them somehow or experience them yourself. If you had to go through treatment, if you had to go through recovery housing, you probably have had to go through something that was paid for or decided upon by a human. And that's where we need to sort of put those realities together for people in recovery, that like we live in these systems that we can affect. Have I gone over time? I think I've gone over time.
No, it's okay. If you got another minute and it's on the tip of your tongue, go for it.
I don't know. I feel pretty good. I mean, I'm glad that I met you, Aaron, because actually, like before I met you, I already was looking at the RAP website with the voter resources and how to put on a town hall that helped me kind of get started. Um, yeah, I mean, if you want to give me any questions
Well,
to
I just appreciate you, and that really was like a natural, like you had already you found the website somehow, and then we got on a Zoom, and we're able to, and I'm so glad that the tools were helpful to you, and the you know I love that your process of developing the questions with the group and asking people in recovery, like you asked a lot of people, which got a lot of people involved with drafting those questions, and and by doing that, it enrolled other people in what you were doing. It wasn't just like, all right, everybody follow me, we're gonna go do this, like that. It's like that. The you really understand that piece of community organizing of like everybody can bring something to the table, and that one question about that one particular question that you talked about, that's going to be put to the candidates. How will if you're elected, how will this community be a part of the decision making process? That came out as a result of everybody working together, and there's some great questions there, and I'm glad that you're doing it at the Jim Gillen Youth Center. And I don't know if people know Jim Gillen, but Jim Gillen was an amazing recovery advocate, a good friend of the Rhode Island recovery community, has since passed away, but he would be proud that something like this was being, was being put on in the space that was dedicated to him. And so I just wanted to say that. So thank you, Celine. We're
Yeah.
gonna
I just realized I had one thing.
yeah, go for it.
One thing I realized today from talking with Sue today. So Sue was one of the people on our committee, and
Yeah.
she talked about, for her, this was her first time kind of getting involved in something community based. And what was really helpful for her was the way that I broke down the large tasks into manageable things that people could then be like, oh, I can take that. I can go with that. And so that's also just a very, I hope some helpful advice for people. Also that something I've noticed is that, so I volunteer for other groups. I've helped with many other events. This is one where I was sort of leading the creation of the event, whereas most times I'm just helping with outreach. And so I realized how much, like, if I get all sort of the structure of the event itself to happen, and then I get people excited about it, then they can do all the outreach. Like Katie here, who just like has been amazing, and she just went out and was just like talking to people about like, you should vote and why you should vote. And honestly, I'm a little tired from doing all the work, and so it's really helpful to like pass on that outreach efforts to other people who don't have that so much burden of just like getting the event to happen, because that's like a whole, they're two different things of like making sure an event happens and getting people engaged.
Right.
um
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, what's this? You need to
Yeah.
know
And the way that you've been able to organize this is exactly what we're working to teach folks about, distributed leadership and the distributed organizing, where like everybody that is on a team or building towards something like has a strength, and whether they might not even know it. And so part of this process is recognizing the strengths of our other team members, and really understanding what they might be passionate about. Like somebody might be really into the media part. Like I don't like the media part, but somebody somebody out there is like totally good with that. And so and so everybody here, you know, just putting that community organizer hat on, and uh working to understand how you want to pitch in, what you're good at, what can you organize. And so thank you, Celine, I appreciate you.
Totally.
And if you want, I don't know if you want to drop your email in the chat if people want to continue to chat with you. But then I'm gonna turn things over to Courtney in Indiana, who is just walking up to people and be like, "Are you registered to vote?" Just going to all the community events and then just asking that question to everybody. So I wanted Courtney to share.
I feel like it's a bad setup for me right now because that was so good and impressive. I'm like, oh Lord.
Oh no, you're doing some amazing work out there, and so I wanted to just make sure that you had some time talking about your experience engaging with voters.
Hi, I'm Courtney. Yes, so in Indiana, we just started reorganizing RAP. It kind of went on hiatus, and it's just kind of it's been a journey to say the least for the last 4 or 5 months. And so for us, very opposite of Celine, who, I mean, it's incredible. I feel like you should do a training session and we can all utilize it, because I was trying to take as many notes as possible. Thank you. You know, we were very strategic. We we went out kind of more as bulldogs, kind of cold calling and showing up to events that were taking place, that were being put on by the state, and really real nervous. We created a campaign with the help of Garrett and Aaron, a QR code, and we walked around with clipboards, and it was a really exciting and fun experience for us, because we got to build relationships, meet allies, but it also projected us into wanting to understand of, you know, the entire system. And the thing I think for me personally was that no one is required by law to state to vote at all, at any level, but it's our right. It's a human constitutional right. And a lot of what we saw when we were approaching individuals at these events, whether it was a recovery house event or a summit by the state or whatever it may be, a lot of people were saying, well, I have a felony, I can't vote. Well, au contraire, because you can in our state, so let's do this. And so we kind of just had this really exciting attitude about it and tried to make it fun. And so again, being new, we had this small goal. We're like, let's get 100 people to register to vote, or if you're already registered, let's make a pledge that you're going to vote recovery. But we had to identify what vote recovery meant to us, our team. And that was a really fun conversation to have. And really what we came out with is that it doesn't matter who anyone votes for, as long as it's right for them. And as long as they know that they feel empowered, that they can utilize their voice. And so really vote recovery means whatever someone wants it to mean to them based off their perspective and their beliefs. So all of this kind of, again, transpired into, okay, let's focus on local stuff. So I started going to council meetings and then county commissioner meetings and asking about the opioid settlement funds that no one knows about for some reason. And so now we're very highly involved in a small county in Indiana as kind of like our piloting area. I was able to do a Narcan training for the sheriff's department and the police department because no one carries it around here. So it's really opened a lot of doors for us. And really, we don't fully know what we're doing, but we're kind of rolling with it with the guidance of Aaron and Garrett. And I feel really honored to be on this call with you guys. And I look up to you guys. You've made it easier because you've been doing this much longer. And I just admire all the work you guys are doing. And I don't really have much more to say. We have been asked by a large, it's called PACE, it's Public Advocates and Community Reentry. And they work very closely with individuals coming out of DOC going back into community, but they reached out to us based off a booth we had at an event very randomly, looking for partners on educating their clientele on voting rights and registering to vote. And that they said that each year they do an advocacy day at the State House, and they would love for us to participate in that session. So yeah, it's been an experience. We've been doing this about a month and a half. And so now we have a new target and a new goal coming into recovery month. And that's kind of it. So
Yeah,
thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much, Courtney. And you all have over 75 you identified 75 recovery voters in like a little over a month. I think that's awesome. And so, yeah, you know, the clipboard is the organizer's best friend, right? Clipboards and pizza usually is the
it's in the car at all times at this point.
Yeah, well, same for me. You know, I have 2 clipboards that I leave them right in my car, and right. And so when you go to those local meetings, like I go to a coordinated effort with the chief of police, and here we have another separate advocacy group in the Grand Strand, South Carolina, and it's like and you know, there's events for Overdose Awareness Day. There are events all throughout September for Recovery Month. There are Mobilize Recovery bus tour that is coming across the country. That there can be that voter engagement if the RAP team you know, needs an engagement for Recovery Month. And then a lot of advocates did this last year. There was some recovery months that were already planned out, and the RAP team just went and they said, hey, is anybody doing voter registration? Is there an advocacy action area? And a lot of the times organizers for Recovery Month are like, no, we you know, we're not doing it, but you can do it if you want. And we just walk around with clipboards. And people are like, yeah. And so and part of that is, and so what Courtney and the advocates out there are doing, mostly in that county, but it's getting bigger than that, is they're building out their organizing power. And Celine had mentioned that too, where it's like all of these things, like we're not just doing a town hall just to have a town hall, you know. All of this sort of stuff builds through a campaign. It's going